No, I mean, what we really need to prioritize is bringing dollars in from out of state. So if we have a local business that is doing that, that should be the priority.
You're right, and we do have several that are those small businesses, like as an example, the Desmanil Fiber Arts Center. I love to use this story because it is such a wonderful story and nobody knows about it. And have very, very small businesses that are being supported by a nonprofit organization. It's a 100% northern New Mexico product that's being made there. They're milling.
The wool is from there.
The wool is from Sierra Maria. It's being milled in Mora. It's being processed in Española, and it's being sold out of state. That's eBase. I mean, it is a remarkable
So eBase
story.
is economic base. That means you bring dollars into our economy that didn't already exist here.
Exactly. And that is a wonderful story because we could be doing that and replicating that all over northern New Mexico, particularly in our very rural areas that have incredible talent and very limited resources. But we're making our investments elsewhere. And I really feel, as a taxpayer, I want my money
And a New
to be
Mexican.
invested here.
A taxpayer and a New Mexican. Thank you, Liddy. I always have Liddy's voice in my head when I'm doing policy. But what would Liddy think? Yes.
To Liddy's point, one talking point for when you're down in Santa Fe, a good example to look at there is the retirement systems of Alabama. Of all the things that Alabama does, 50 out of 50, their retirement systems are invested in the state. Kind of like what you're talking about. And through the last couple of recessions, their return to that fund was actually better than a lot of others because they invest in sound businesses in the state, but to grow the state in different ways. And a lot of kind of public-private type investments.
So I am not a financial person. I mean, I've had to learn a lot in this position, but there are folks who invest. Like, they invest as a matter of practice, and they are supportive. In fact, the gentleman who carried the bill is a huge investor, and he, really supports a portion of our state investments being local. So I hadn't thought about the retirement funds.
That's just a talking point to take back. Look at, it's RSA is what it's called.
Okay.
They own office buildings in New York, they own everything else, but they also
Invest
look
in their
first
state.
to invest in the state.
Okay.
The other is that we talk about diversification of the economy is a huge thing.
Yes.
And it's not an answer for this year's budget because that can't happen that fast. But for long term, I think everybody's in agreement that we need to do that. And I was wondering, these groups that when you're in hearings and stuff, do the economic development people in the state talk to the companies they did not get?
You've asked me this question before.
Have I?
Yes.
Well, it just occurs to me that we're looking at all these incentives.
Do we find
Texas
out
is
why?
looking at what they really
people
want, because taxes.
Or what we didn't have that they needed.
Right, because a lot of times it's not the incentives that are keeping them out.
Didn't RDC do some kind of survey? There was some business climate survey that was done, gosh, I don't even, it was like in 12, 13, asking businesses, basically had them come in and interviewed them and said, here's our landscape. Here's what we can offer, here's what we have a deficit in. What matters to you? And workforce actually rose to the top on that survey.
A lot of times it's not the incentive.
Those were the two that were
Workforce
on
and
top.
mentoring. You do know what I'm talking about, yeah. Was it RDC who did that?
It was
Yeah.
RDC.
Yeah, so I think some of our answers, we don't even have, we know our answers. But yeah, you're right, we need to find out why we didn't get that fish.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, Micheline?
Can you comment some, it seems that these workforce issues, it all links back in some way to education, I think. I mean, do you have any comments on that?
I have a lot of comments on that. A lot
Or
of
thoughts?
A lot of thoughts on that. Where to start?
Well, start with the budget cuts that they're facing right now. I mean, we always, with the exception, of course, of Los Alamos Public Schools, which are some of the best in the nation, the state is awful. And yet we spend almost all of our budget, the majority of our budget on it, and now we're cutting our higher education, which is, with the exception of New Mexico Tech, not very good either.
Okay.
So how do we improve in the midst of cutting our budget?
and then have a workforce that goes to these other issues. I mean, that's where I see the linkage.
And stay in New Mexico.
Right, exactly.
So we are graduating ill-prepared students. I'm sorry, Kurt, I'm just speaking statewide. We have an issue with our students, and Cindy can tell you, that come from New Mexico and enroll in college and have to immediately take remedial courses. So we already know they're not walking across the stage ready to enter college. Perhaps that is a resource issue. I mean, people say, well, if you can't do it with 52% of the budget, then, but really, we haven't even made up for the cuts that were originally made to education when the bottom went out of the economy in 08 and 09. So we're not even keeping pace. We haven't even climbed up out of that hole yet. Yes, it is a large portion of the budget, but I'm going to tell you right now, educating New Mexican kids is expensive. New Mexican kids come to school facing systemic poverty, cyclical violence, substance abuse in the home. They come to a classroom door carrying all that with them. It goes back to what we were talking about before. New Mexican kids, at-risk kids, are expensive to educate people. I'm just going to tell you that. And I will stand behind that statement anytime. So part of it is a resource issue. We are very fractured right now.
Can I say something?
Yeah, say something.
I just
Doug.
moved here. We moved here from Cleveland, Ohio, and it's a national thing. It's a national academic. It's a national problem. And I think one of the things we have to realize is that not every kid is going to go to college.
Okay.
And
So
I think one of the things that's missing is the trades.
Okay, and necessarily should go to college.
Right.
I mean, that is definitely a track that we have hyper-focused on. We are now trying to say, well, college and career ready, but what do we have available in terms of training for career ready? And man, I was at this great conference that Higher Ed just put on in terms of a grant that they got from the feds to do workforce training. SunPath. It basically, in the healthcare industry, yeah, she loves it too. Okay, so basically it's this idea that students really what they need, 1 year of college and a credential. To actually, that's called the tipping point. Basically that takes them from working tons of menial jobs in which they have very little income to actually having a meaningful career in something. That's all it takes. That's the tipping point. So this is sort of based on that idea. The issue is that is sort of a short-term solution. That grant is going to go away. We have not built out infrastructure to be able to necessarily support it after that money goes away. And we still have the issue that we're graduating ill-prepared students. We still have that issue. So right now, what I was going to say about us here in New Mexico is that we're fractured. We don't have a unified focus on improving schools. We have, the school reform movement, that the governor really has been pushing, and we found, especially with teacher evaluations and things like that, that is just really destroying morale, is what that's doing, unfortunately. The third grade flunking, I mean, we have some of these initiatives. We don't have a long-range plan for improving educational quality for kids. I think that includes elevating the profession, because you can't, and people try to pit students and teachers against each other all the time. That's a false dichotomy. I refuse to buy into that, because I've never seen a successful student without a successful teacher. You have to have successful teachers to have successful students. You can't have one or the other. You can't say, oh, we're not going to pay attention to teachers. Teachers can just,